The AC made a low, uneven hum above my head, spitting lukewarm air into my living room. I sat cross-legged on the floor, sorting through last month's bills with a chipped ceramic mug of cold coffee beside me. Nothing in the room was broken, but everything felt a little off, like the silence after a thunderclap, stretched too long. That's when my phone buzzed once, then again, sharp and insistent on the edge of the coffee table. Caller ID, mid-state auto recovery. I almost didn't answer. It sounded like spam, but something about the name tugged at the edge of my memory, familiar, but not mine. "Hello," I said, pressing the phone between my shoulder and ear as I scooped up a crumpled energy bill. "Is this Mr. Nathan Carter?" "Yeah, speaking." "We're calling about the delinquent loan balance on the 2017 Dodge Charger registered under your name. You've missed 3 payments. If we don't hear from you within 72 hours, we'll proceed with repossession." I stopped moving. "Wait, what Dodge Charger?" The woman on the other end paused. I could hear keys tapping. "Name matches. Loan signed 6 months ago at Central Credit Union. VIN ending in 4927. I stared at the wall, my mind flipping through every car I'd ever owned. My last ride had been a beat-up Camry I sold before switching to the bus and a bike. I hadn't taken a loan out for anything in over 2 years. "This isn't my car, son," I said. "I can send over a copy of the contract, sir. You'll want to speak with the fraud department." That was the moment my stomach dropped. One name floated to the surface of my brain. Jordan. Jordan Carter. My cousin. My mom's sister's kid. The one who always called me Big Bro, even though we were the same age. The one who had stayed at my place for a few months last year. Just until I get back on my feet, Nate. The one who had borrowed my driver's license just to get into that bar. That night, I didn't sleep. I should have seen it coming. Jordan was the kind of guy who could convince a bouncer to let him in with a library card. Charismatic, grinning, always just on the right side of broke. When we were kids, he'd trade snacks at school and somehow always walk away with more than he gave. When he moved in with me after his lease fell through, I didn't question it. Family, right? He showed up with a gym bag, a torn duffel, and a dog-eared spiral notebook full of business ideas. We split groceries. I let him borrow my laptop. He swore he'd only stay 2 weeks. He stayed 3 months, left owing me $240 for utilities, and now, apparently, a car loan in my name. The next day, I went straight to the credit union. I sat across from a guy named Dennis in a cubicle that smelled like printer toner and old coffee grounds. He slid a paper toward me. A scanned copy of a car loan agreement. My name, my address, my social security number, my signature. Except it wasn't my signature. It was a clumsy imitation, looped where mine was sharp, too upright. Jordan had never been great at forging, but apparently it didn't matter. "Do you know this man?" Dennis asked, tapping the co-signer section. Next to a printed line reading Jordan A. Carter was an actual, legible signature. I nodded slowly. "He's my cousin." Dennis gave a long exhale. "Well, if you didn't authorize this, we'll initiate a fraud investigation. But until that completes, technically, the account is your responsibility. We'll hold off on collections, but you'll need to file a police report and submit a sworn affidavit." He handed me a clipboard and a pen. I stared at the signature again. The gall of it. That weekend, I drove out to Jordan's place. Well, not his place. His girlfriend's. She opened the door halfway, makeup smudged, a toddler clinging to her hip. "He's not here," she said, before I could even speak. "When's he coming back?" She shifted her weight. "When his check hits, I guess. He's been staying at Darnell's. Car's there too." I looked past her. The living room was strewn with toys. The TV was on mute, showing a paused cartoon. "You mind giving me his number?" She rolled her eyes and rattled off digits. I typed them into my phone. Thanks, I said, already walking back to my car. You might want to bring a wrench if you plan on getting anything from him, she called after me. He's been ducking everybody. Jordan picked up on the third ring. Yo, his voice was chipper. Nate Dogg, what's up, man? You used my name. Silence, then a sigh. Okay, listen, it was just a temp thing, all right? I was going to change it over, but I needed a boost for the down payment, and you've got the clean credit, man. Come on. Are you serious? I wasn't going to let it tank. Things got tight. You know how it is. Do you even realize they're coming to repossess the car? They called me. My credit's hit. I've got collection notices in my name. I'm fixing it, bro. I swear. Just give me a little time. I got a plan. No, I said. You're done with plans. He chuckled awkwardly. Don't be like that. It's just a car. You'll get your score back. No, you're going to sign it over to me. Title, keys, all of it. You want me to eat your loan? Fine. Then I own the damn car. He went quiet. You're serious? Dead serious? That's crazy. I hung up. The next day, I showed up at Darnell's. Jordan was out front, shirtless, fiddling with a speaker system in the Charger. It was bright red, shiny, and parked crooked on the lawn like it knew it didn't belong there. I walked straight up, no smile. He saw me, held out his arms. Nate, my man. I'm not playing, Jordan. He dropped his arms. What's the paperwork look like, son? I asked. Opened the passenger door, pulled a folder from the glove box. We walked through it. Title, insurance, registration. Everything was under my name. The bank had even sent the copy to his address. That afternoon, I drove away in the Charger. Jordan stood on the curb, holding his phone, watching me. For a second, he looked like he might yell something. Instead, he just turned around and walked back inside. At first, it felt like a small win. The car was clean, drove smooth. It smelled like Jordan's cologne and fast food wrappers, which I threw out. I had it detailed the next day, but driving it through town made me feel like I was wearing someone else's shoes. Worse, like I'd inherited someone's debt-ridden life. And this wasn't over. Because 3 days later, I got another call. Same number. New warning. Apparently, the car was involved in something else. Not a traffic ticket, not a missed payment. Something bigger. I parked the Charger 2 blocks away from my apartment that night. Not because I was worried about it being stolen, but because I didn't want to see it. I didn't want the neighbors asking questions. I didn't want to explain why I suddenly had a shiny red muscle car when just last month I'd been clipping coupons and borrowing someone's Costco card. And I definitely didn't want to admit that I'd been roped into owning it against my will. The thing looked like trouble. Now it was trouble. The second call came on a Thursday. I was on my lunch break, waiting for a microwave chicken wrap to cool down in the break room. My phone buzzed, and I almost didn't answer. Again. But the number looked too familiar. Same company. Mid-State Auto Recovery. Mr. Carter, we've flagged a lien filed by City Safe Insurance related to damage incurred in a hit-and-run involving your vehicle. I paused mid-chew. What are you talking about? I just got the car. There's an open police report. Incident occurred 3 weeks ago. Rear-end collision in a parking structure downtown. Security footage shows the vehicle license plate. It hasn't been resolved. 3 weeks ago, the car was still in Jordan's possession. Someone else was driving it. Well, unfortunately, it's titled in your name, so for now, liability falls on you. Unless you can prove the driver was unauthorized. The words clanged around in my head like loose bolts. Do you have a copy of the footage? I asked. She said it was already being forwarded to the address on file, which, of course, was Jordan's girlfriend's apartment. I drove straight there. Jasmine, Jordan's girlfriend, opened the door, holding the toddler again, this time with one hand wrapped around a juice box. "You're back," she said, like I was some kind of collector. "I need the mail now." She jerked her chin toward the kitchen table. "It's all there. He's been using your name for everything lately." I stopped, opening it. I rifled through the stack. 2 insurance notices, 1 pink envelope marked urgent, a glossy flyer for a payday loan place, and there it was, a manila envelope from CitySafe. I opened it right there. Inside was a report, time-stamped and printed on pale green paper, along with 2 stills from a security camera. The charger, clearly visible, plate number readable. And there, in the driver's seat, a blurry but unmistakable shape. Jordan. Wearing his trademark snapback turned backward and one of those gaudy gold chain necklaces. "Is this where he keeps the rest of his crap?" I asked, gesturing toward the small pile of boxes under the side table. Jasmine smirked. "He doesn't really keep anything. He just rotates garbage between couches." That night, I stared at the footage until my eyes hurt. I knew I needed to file a report, prove Jordan had taken the car without consent. But part of me hated the idea of dragging this any further into legal hell. We were family. We'd shared bunk beds at Grandma's house. We fought over Pop-Tarts and played video games for hours. And now I was trying to prove to insurance that he was a fraud and a liar. But what choice did I have? I made the police report the next morning. The desk sergeant looked at me with raised eyebrows. "So he signed the loan in your name, and you didn't know?" "No." "But now you're driving the car?" I sighed. "Because I do own it now, legally. I'm just trying to clean up the mess." She typed something. "And you're reporting that he caused the damage and fled the scene?" "Yep." "Got any evidence?" I slid the photos across the desk. She squinted, then nodded. "You'll probably be subpoenaed for this, just FYI. Might go to small claims." I figured. "Family's the worst," she muttered under her breath. I nodded. "Tell me about it." Later that week, I got a call from Jordan. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer. "You really snitched on me, Nate? You used my name. You hit someone's car and ran. What the hell did you expect? It wasn't even a big dent. You could have worked with me, man. I'm already working overtime cleaning up your wreckage." He went quiet for a moment, then laughed bitterly. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" "No," I said. "I just think I'm not you." Click. Over the next few weeks, I started getting letters. The first was from CitySafe Insurance, informing me that, pending the investigation, I was still the liable party. The second was from the credit union, notifying me that my score had dropped 81 points. The third was from Jordan's ex, who messaged me on Facebook out of nowhere. "He ever pay you back? He owes me for 2 months' rent from 22. This guy left a trail like a busted oil pipe. I started driving the Charger to work, but I hated the stairs. Everyone thought I was doing better financially. My manager even joked, "Guess that promotion came early, huh?" Yeah, real early, like in a nightmare. I was paying the loan minimums out of sheer fear. I couldn't afford the repo damage to my credit. Every month felt like tossing cash into a fire I didn't light. But one day, something unexpected happened. I was pulling into a gas station when a guy in a business shirt flagged me down. "Hey man, nice ride. You selling?" I blinked. "What?" "The Charger. I've been looking for one just like that. I'll pay in cash. You got the title?" I didn't. Not yet. But I could. That night I pulled up the loan balance. It was steep, over $17,000 remaining. But the offer the guy gave me? $19,000 flat in cash. I crunched the numbers. If I sold it, paid off the loan, I'd break even, or maybe even walk away with a couple $100. More importantly, I'd be done. Done with Jordan's mess. Done with the guilt. Done with the payments. the insurance threats, the phantom debt that had haunted my mailbox for months. So I made a call, this time not to Jordan, to the bank. When I told them I was planning to pay off the loan in full, they perked up. "We can process that early payoff and have the lien removed within 5-7 business days," the rep said. "Then the title is yours." Great. I cleared my savings, drained my tax return, even borrowed $500 from my buddy Marcus with the promise of paying him back within a week. And when the title came, I held it in my hand like a victory flag, printed clean. Nathaniel Carter, sole owner. I met the guy from the gas station in a public lot. He looked the car over, handed me a thick envelope, and drove off. I paid Marcus back the next day, and I finally closed the book on Jordan's car. Or so I thought, because the following Monday, I got another call from Detective Rayner. "Mr. Carter," he said, "we need to talk. Your cousin Jordan was picked up last night, and your name came up again." I swallowed. "What now?" "It's about identity fraud, and it seems the charger was only the beginning." Detective Rayner's voice was calm, but I could tell he'd made calls like this before. Calls where some poor idiot found himself dragged further into someone else's screw-ups than he ever thought possible. "We're currently holding your cousin," he said, "and we're investigating a string of fraudulent loan applications, 4 of which list you as a reference. 2 actually list you as the co-signer." My throat tightened. "I never signed a damn thing." "That's what he said," Rayner replied, like he'd already heard that line too many times. "But he's using my name. That's what it looks like. We pulled some bank records. Application submitted using your old address, the one he stayed at. Your employer's name, your partial Social Security, even your tax filing. History." I rubbed my eyes and leaned against the fridge. Jesus. I know this is a lot, but we're trying to figure out how deep this goes. And if you cooperate, we can likely remove your name from liability as long as you're not involved. I'm not even close. I figured. You actually paid the loan, that's rare. I almost laughed. Yeah, I'm a sucker like that. The next few days were a blur of paperwork and headaches. I had to give a formal statement, provide ID copies, sign affidavits, hand over every bill, lease, and email I had from the last year. I met Detective Rayner at a downtown precinct that smelled like ink toner and microwave popcorn. He was in his 40s, with a close-trimmed beard and a wedding ring he kept fiddling with. "Your cousin's got a bit of a trail," he said, laying out a manila folder on the desk. Inside were copies of other loan applications, not just for the charger, one for a personal loan from a place called Quick Credit USA, $5,000, one for a payday advance under Fast Cash 360, $850, one for a cell phone plan, 5 devices, all maxed out, never paid, and another for a rental agreement on an apartment I'd never heard of. "He's been using your info to build trust," Rayner explained. "Lists you as a stable cosigner, sometimes as an emergency contact. When people check the name, it shows up clean, because it's your record. But when things go bad, the contact trail goes nowhere, or worse, it loops back to you." My jaw clenched. How many people has he done this to? At least 3 others so far, but you're the only one who's been hit this hard. When I got home that night, I sat in silence for over an hour, not watching TV, not scrolling my phone, just staring at the pile of documents on my table. I thought about the last time Jordan and I were close, really close. We were 12, playing basketball in Aunt Lorraine's driveway, him trash-talking every shot while I tried to beat him with fundamentals. I'd thought of us as brothers back then, closer than cousins, like blood. Now I was just another mark. A week later, I was subpoenaed. Not for criminal charges, thank God, but to testify in the fraud case against Jordan. Apparently, one of his other victims had pressed charges, and the DA wanted to build a stronger case by stacking the incidents. Since mine had documentation, receipts, emails, and a full paper trail, including the loan payoff, it was solid evidence. I called my mom, told her everything. She cried. Not for me, for Jordan. He always had such a good heart, she said, voice trembling. When did he lose it? Maybe he never had it to begin with, I muttered. She didn't answer. The day of the hearing, I wore my only suit, the one I'd used for job interviews and my dad's funeral. The courtroom was sterile, beige, and cold. Jordan sat at the defense table wearing a cheap blazer over a wrinkled dress shirt. He looked thinner, tired. When they called my name, I walked past him without looking. On the stand, I told them everything. How he'd used my ID, my info. How the car loan hit me out of nowhere. How I'd ended up driving a vehicle I never wanted. How I sold it just to crawl back to zero. Jordan didn't look up once. Afterward, as I stepped down, he finally glanced at me. For a second, his expression flickered, something between resentment and regret. Then it was gone. The court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. Jordan was charged with multiple counts of fraud, including identity theft, falsifying documents, and wire fraud. He took a plea deal, 18 months in county, plus restitution payments that everyone knew he'd never make. Weeks passed. Then a letter arrived. Plain white envelope. No return address. Inside was a short, sloppy note. Didn't mean to drag you into all that, Nate. I just got desperate. Thought I could fix it before it got bad. Guess I was wrong. Thanks for not burying me worse than you could have. No apology. Just that. I folded it up and threw it in the trash. Months later, I was finally rebuilding. Credit inching back up. Stress levels dropping. Got a better job. Started dating again. The Charger was long gone, but I'd gotten a used Civic. Cheap, dependable, mine. I thought the whole ordeal was behind me. Until I got another knock at the door. A woman in a navy blazer and gray slacks stood outside holding a clipboard. Mr. Nathan Carter? Yeah? I'm with the Department of Revenue. We're conducting an audit related to a flagged tax filing under your name. I'm going to need to ask you some questions. I blinked. I haven't filed anything out of the ordinary. She gave a thin smile. You might want to check with whoever submitted your 2024 return. It claims you ran a side business and claimed a $12,000 equipment deduction. My heart dropped into my stomach. Jordan. The Department of Revenue rep stood calm, professional, and utterly unaware that her words had just cracked open a trap door beneath my feet. A side business? I repeated. She nodded, flipping her clipboard open. According to our records, a Schedule C was filed under your SSN, claiming expenses for a mobile detailing company, deducted tools, fuel, software subscriptions, and even advertising costs. Total write-offs exceeded $12,000. We flagged it during a routine cross-check. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I didn't file that, I finally said. I believe you, she said carefully, but the IRS doesn't go on belief. They go on paperwork. If it's fraud, you'll need to submit proof and file an identity theft affidavit immediately. My body sagged against the doorframe. How long do I have? 30 days to dispute, or the claim goes to collections. And Mr. Carter, if you had a refund withheld or redirected, you'll want to check your banking records. I didn't have to. I already knew where it went. I spent the rest of the day on hold. IRS, state revenue, taxpayer protection program. Each line was its own flavor of hell. Hold music that looped endlessly. Automated menus that didn't understand my voice. Agents who shuffled me from one extension to another like I was part of some twisted scavenger hunt. Every time I explained the situation, I felt like I was reciting a horror story no one quite believed. Yes, my cousin used my identity. Yes, he filed a false return. No, I didn't authorize it. No, I didn't receive any money. Yes, I've already dealt with a fraudulent auto loan and a pending insurance case. By the end of the day, I'd repeated my name, birthday, and last four digits of my SSN so many times they no longer felt real. That night, I pulled out an old photo album. Tucked between pages of dust-covered memories was a picture of me and Jordan at 17. We were standing side by side at a local fair, arm around each other, grinning like idiots. He had a hot dog in one hand. I was holding a cheap stuffed bear I'd won for a girl I never saw again. Looking at that photo, I couldn't figure out when things changed, when he stopped being a cousin and started being a con artist. Or maybe he always was both. I filed every form they asked for: fraud affidavit, copy of my driver's license, police report number, a signed statement of denial under penalty of perjury. I even requested a 6-year transcript of my tax history to comb through any filings I didn't recognize. That's when I found something even worse. He hadn't just filed once. He'd filed twice, 2023 and 2024, under my name. In 2023, he'd claimed I was self-employed, listed 4 dependents, and somehow triggered a child tax credit payout. And the refund had gone to a prepaid debit card. I called the bank listed on the transcript. After an hour of transfers and verification, they gave me the card's mailing address. It wasn't mine, but I knew it. Jordan's old P.O. box, the one he used when we were roommates and trying out different business ventures. My hands shook as I wrote it down. I contacted Detective Rayner again. He called back the next morning. "Didn't expect to hear from you again so soon," he said. "Jordan used my name to file taxes, twice." He sighed. "You've got to be kidding." I wasn't. He asked for the transcripts. I emailed everything. By noon, he confirmed it. "We've opened a new case," he said. "The IRS might prosecute this separately. This is federal now." A week later, Jordan called. This time, collect. I stared at the blinking notification. Inmate call from county jail. Jordan A. Carter. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. "Yo," he said, voice hoarse. "I heard you filed more charges." I didn't say anything. "You know, you're blowing this way out of proportion." I actually laughed. "Out of proportion? You filed federal taxes using my name." "I was gonna fix it. I needed the cash, man. I've been in a tight spot." "You've been in a tight spot your entire adult life, Jordan." He went quiet. Then, "You don't get it." "No," I snapped. "I do get it. You're a liar, a thief. And the worst part? You're not even good at it. Every time you try to play the system, you drag someone down with you. And this time, that someone is me." He started to say something else, but I hung up. It took months to untangle everything. The IRS cleared my record, but not before freezing my 2025 return. I spent hours at the bank filing identity theft claims. My credit remained bruised. Every time I applied for something, an apartment, a small loan, I had to explain the mess. I finally hired a lawyer, just in case. Paid him in installments. I also started using a credit monitoring service, something I never thought I'd need. Every ding, every inquiry, every change, it all pinged my phone now. I couldn't trust the silence anymore. Silence used to mean peace. Now it meant maybe he's trying something again. And then came the final twist, one I never saw coming. In early spring, I got a letter from a collections agency I didn't recognize. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a hospital bill, emergency room, $3,127, date of service, 2 months ago. Patient, Nathaniel Carter. Only I hadn't been to the ER, not in years. I called the number. "Yes, we have you listed as being treated for a leg fracture. We have photo ID on file and a signed intake form." "From what hospital?" "St. Augustine Memorial downtown." I hung up and drove there immediately. When I arrived, I demanded to see the intake paperwork. The clerk hesitated, then finally slid a copy across the desk. I looked at the signature. Shaky. Wrong again. Attached was a photocopy of a driver's license. Mine. Only it wasn't mine. It was a fake. My face, different address, and the birth date, off by 1 day. Just enough to confuse a system. They'd treated him, under my name, again. This time, I didn't even get mad, just tired. I sat on the curb outside the hospital and stared at the traffic until the sun dipped behind the buildings. Jordan wasn't just reckless. He was a black hole. Everything he touched, he twisted. And somehow, I kept being in his orbit. But not anymore. No more loans. No more cars. No more stolen names. It was time to take one last step, to end the cycle. I walked into the police precinct the next morning, held up the evidence, and said 5 words. I want to press charges. The officer behind the desk didn't flinch when I said it. He just nodded, turned to his computer, and began typing. I assume you've already filed the previous reports? Multiple. I've got case numbers, transcripts, even a stack of affidavits if you want to see them again. He didn't even blink. It's more common than you think. I'm starting to realize that. He printed out a form, handed it across the scratched desk, and gave me a pen. Full legal name here. Initial the bottom, then sign. As I filled out the final paperwork to press formal charges against my cousin, again, I realized just how numb I'd become. The anger was gone. The shame, too. All that remained was quiet resolve. I wasn't doing this for vengeance. I was doing it for closure, for boundaries, for my future, for the right to finally live with my name again, and not the wreckage he'd tattooed across every document, credit record, and loan system he could reach. 3 weeks later, I sat in a courtroom for the second time. This time, Jordan didn't look confident. He looked small, unshaven, hands cuffed in front of him. The prosecutor laid it out. Multiple counts of identity theft, tax fraud, falsification of medical documents, and use of a forged government ID. The judge didn't even blink when they read the list. I was called to testify again, but this time it felt different, cleaner, final. After I stepped down, I didn't look at Jordan. He tried to meet my eye once, but I looked straight ahead. The sentence came down later that month. 4 years, with eligibility for parole in 18 months if he showed evidence of good behavior and full cooperation in restitution efforts. That last part was almost laughable. What restitution? Jordan was broke, unemployable, no savings, no assets, no credibility. The debt would follow him for years, but I knew I'd never see a cent. And honestly, that was fine. Money wasn't what I needed back. What I needed was distance. The hospital forgave the emergency bill after I filed official identity theft documents. My taxes were corrected. My credit, still recovering, but stable. And me? I moved out of the apartment where Jordan had stayed with me. New zip code, new lease, new locks on the doors. I traded the Civic in and used the money to buy a modest secondhand SUV. Nothing flashy. Just something that felt like mine. Fully mine. Months later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address again. This time it was handwritten. Inside, you did what you had to do. I see that now. Prison gives you time to think, and I don't blame you anymore. I just hope one day you'll forgive me. Jay. I didn't cry. I didn't crumple it. I didn't frame it or burn it or post it online. I just folded it, placed it in a drawer, and left it there. I'm not sure I'll ever speak to Jordan again. Maybe someday, years from now, we'll bump into each other at a family gathering or not. Maybe he'll change, or maybe he won't. That's not up to me. What is up to me is this: I've taken my name back. I've made peace with the chaos, and I've rebuilt from the ashes of someone else's choices. So if you're reading this and someone's using your name, using your trust, don't wait. Draw your line, hold your ground. And remember, loyalty without boundaries isn't love. It's self-destruction. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.